What's interesting about AI is that it's finally turning the so-called fourth industrial revolution into the sort of shock to our system that the steam engine produced from the mid-18th century. A real challenge to the status quo at every level of society, not just the workplace. We'll be looking at various perspectives on this seismic shift from technologists and thinkers in several fields. In this show, we talk to Peter Voss, who believes a new form of AI will alleviate some of the end-of-days anxiety that many of us are currently having and create a better world.
Hi friends, welcome to The Evolving Leader, the show built on the belief that we need better leadership to confront the world's biggest challenges. I'm Scott Allender.
And I'm John Gomes.
How are you feeling today, Mr. Gomes?
I am feeling a mixture of things. The personal life is going very well at the moment. Got a number of really good things happening in my family, so that's wonderful. Feeling quite challenged with the torrent of work that's happening at the moment. All good, but it's quite demanding and doing a lot of traveling, which adds into the mix. So yeah, generally feeling uplifted. How are you feeling?
Uplifted is a good word. I just returned from my daughter's school performance this morning, so I'm feeling quite proud and uplifted and a little emotional as the school year comes to a close and we start to step into yet another chapter in the growth of my kids and all of that. I'm just feeling really grateful for you and for Phil and for your whole team and for this show that we get to do every week, and delighted and excited to be joined by our guest today, because today we are joined by Peter Voss. At just 25 years old, Peter launched his first company, Electronic Designs, which within 7 years IPO'd as a 400-person software hardware solutions company. After retiring from the company, Peter spent several years studying various subjects pertaining to advanced AI. These included cognitive psychology, psychometrics, epistemology, neural networks, and other aspects of computer science. And in 2002, he launched Adaptive AI Inc., a research and development company focused on developing AGI. And in 2008, he spun out Smart Action, a commercial company utilizing Aigo.ai's intelligence engine. And a few years back, he launched AGI Innovations, Inc., a 10-person technology development company dedicated to achieving further breakthroughs in deep natural language understanding, adaptive conversation management, and contextual reasoning. Peter often writes and presents on various philosophical topics, including rational ethics, free will, and artificial minds. And we are really excited to talk to you today, Peter. Peter, welcome to The Evolving Leader.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Peter, welcome to the show. How are you feeling today?
Good, great. Yeah, all energized.
So let's not make any assumptions. How did you get into the artificial intelligence space?
Well, it was really, just sort of listening to the history, a trip down memory lane, and it's when I exited the listed company that I had formed, which is an ERP software company. I had enough sort of time and money on my hands to say, okay, what engaging thing do I want to work on next? And the thing that struck me is that software is really quite dumb. You know, if the programmer didn't think of something, then it'll just give you an error message or crash or whatever. You know, software doesn't really have any common sense. And so how can we fix it? And, it seemed like an incredibly interesting and challenging problem and very important one. So it was really very natural for me to transition from, starting with hardware, software, and then intelligence. Basically, how can we build intelligent systems? I also had a deep interest in philosophy and psychology, and these things sort of really come together. Is how do we know anything? How can we be certain? Why do we want things? And what makes cognition work? What makes humans special?
So before we get into all of this, I think it'd be helpful because, artificial intelligence, AI, I think it's like other expressions in my experience around emotional intelligence or, self-awareness where we say it so much that we sort of assume we're all talking about the same thing, but not necessarily. So can you give us some simple definitions that anyone can understand when we say AI, when you're talking about this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very good question because the term AI is all over the place. So when the term was coined originally some 60 odd years ago, it really referred to building machines that can think, learn, and reason the way humans do, basically to build thinking machines. So the cognitive, to have an artificial brain that has cognitive ability of a human, roughly, Obviously, it'd be better at some things and maybe not quite as good at others. Now, actually, they thought originally they would crack this problem sort of within a few years. Well, it turned out to be much, much harder, of course. So what happened over the decades is the field of AI really changed from the original ideal to narrow AI. And there's actually a very profound difference there, because that change also implied that the intelligence was no longer in the machine, but rather in the designer, in the engineer. And I'll give an example here. One of the famous breakthroughs in AI was IBM's Deep Blue, the world chess champion in, I think, around about the 80s. Mm-hmm. And it was really the ingenuity, the intelligence of the programmers that solved the problem on how to use algorithms, how to use computers to build a piece of software that could play a good game of chess. Now, that machine doesn't really have the intelligence in anywhere near the way that humans have. It can't even learn to play checkers. It can't do anything. It didn't really learn. It was programmed to do this. And fast forward now to AlphaGo, the Go world champion from DeepMind. Now here it wasn't as much programming. I mean, there was still a lot of programming, but it was still the ingenuity of the data scientists and engineers of what algorithms can we put together and what massive amounts of training data can we collect and apply to this to build a system that can basically play a good game of Go. So really the field of AI changed from the original idea of thinking machines to narrow AI and external intelligence. So really very different. So in 2002, I actually coined the term artificial general intelligence together with two other people, Ben Goertzel and Shane Legg. And that was exactly an effort to basically get back to the original ideal of AI, to build thinking machines, because we felt in 2002 that hardware and software development had progressed sufficiently that it was worth going back to tackling that ideal. Now, there's still very, very few people working on AGI, now 20 some years later, for various reasons. And one of them is actually an accident of history. And that accident is that deep learning, machine learning, big data approaches have been so incredibly successful in the last 10 years that they've sucked all of the oxygen out of the air. That companies have made so much money with, image recognition and targeted advertising and all the various applications for deep learning that really nobody else is, hardly anybody is working on the real problem of building thinking machines. So there's this basically confusion. And today we have a whole generation of engineers and scientists that don't even know that AI could be anything other than deep learning, machine learning, or now ChatGPT, which is just the next sort of evolution of big data statistical systems.
So when we look at these systems, there's been wave after wave of expectation, primarily in the media, about what AI is going to do. Why? So we've seen all these waves that are about to change the world. It seems that it's different this time. ChatGPT seems different. Why is that? Why is it suddenly going to change the world for real this time?
Well, why it seems different is, I think what took everybody by surprise is just how much better the system became by just scaling it up, by throwing more data at it. With the innovation of transformers, and that's the T in GPT. It's an innovation that came out in 2015, and people found that basically by just building bigger and bigger systems, we suddenly, with ChatGPT 3.5 and 4, ChatGPT, GPT 3.5 and 4, the system can create such excellent prose, so human-like, that it really took everybody by surprise. And we look at this and say, wow, this smells, this feels like real human intelligence. And now we're now quite a few months into this, where people, start to try and use this in serious applications. And some of it is starting to wear off now, because people realize just, sort of this, how skin deep that intelligence, that veneer of intelligence really is. And so my own assessment is that these systems will not get us to AGI. They will not get us to human level intelligence for a number of technical reasons we could talk about. But they are extremely, extremely impressive and very, very useful. So yes, it is different. I mean, the whole, I gave a talk at one of the big universities recently, and higher education is like freaked out by this. How are we going to deal with this? If students can just get all their work done by ChatGPT and next generations, it is profound. It really is profound, the change that had happened, but it's not AGI.
There's a lot of excitement, and there's also a lot of fear in the conversation. So maybe it's a good place to sort of talk about how will AGI solve problems that need to be solved, and then maybe what are the risks? What should we not be using it for, even when we can?
You're talking about sort of the current version of GPT,
well, I'm just sort of thinking about the
longer term.
The picture you're. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll just start with the first part of the question. Mm-hmm. So in terms of how you think about using AGI to solve some of the world's biggest challenges, what do you think the biggest opportunities are? And then maybe after that we can turn to, are there any risks or concerns associated with this?
Right. Well, once we get to AGI, imagine having on tap and very inexpensively millions, billions of PhD level researchers helping us solve all sorts of problems, whether it's the obvious ones are, disease, pollution, climate change, energy, I mean, you name all the big problems that if we could solve them, it would improve the lives of humanity tremendously. Mm-hmm. And so, imagine you train up one AGI for cancer research, you make 1 million copies of it. Now suddenly you have 1 million cancer researchers chipping away 24/7 that can communicate flawlessly with each other, don't have egos getting in the way, perfect, photographic memory, access to the internet. Clearly we are going to make significantly faster progress in conquering, disease. So, and that's really across the board, whether you're talking about energy developments and nanotechnology and so on. I would also add to that governance. We seem to be really, really bad at running our societies. I mean, just look at the kind of leaders we end up with. Are those the best people to be making decisions about how to organize society and so on? It seems extremely unlikely. So, I just see, and tremendous positives from this, and essentially radical abundance, because it'll dramatically reduce the cost of goods and services.
So with this kind of radical abundance, which people have been talking about in various forms when you've got quantum computing and AI at this scale, there's always a flip side to it, because we were here in 1993, 4, 5 with the internet, with every technology just enables human nature to do what it does, for good or bad. So without being doom-mongering about this, let's lean into what are the kind of ethical, moral challenges facing us with this technology.
Well, of course, we have disruption of society, just change. And, some people are less comfortable with change than others, to put it mildly. But then, we look back and we say, should we not have invented electricity? Would society be better off without electricity? Would we be better off without the internet? There may be some people who feel that the answer is yes, but I think most of us feel absolutely not. Would we like to dramatically reduce disease and poverty? But yes, it'll take, there'll be disruption in society, because clearly some jobs, a large number of jobs that currently make sense to have humans do them, will not make sense to have humans do them in the future. So, that those will be the disruptions. It sort of, there's an analogy of when, almost everybody you talk to might say, I'd love to win the lottery. You hear this all the time. Now, you look at lottery winners, they're not all necessarily happy. And, AGI will basically make everybody a lottery winner because of the abundance. But the positive thing, or the mitigating factor here, is we will also have we'll have very competent psychologists that will help us deal with this radical abundance, because that's what AGIs will also be able to do. It'll be like everybody will have their own personal assistant that is also a good psychologist. And it's a bit like having an angel sitting on your shoulder permanently that you can, will say, well, maybe you should get out and do something, have all these possibilities, and whatever the case may be. So I think we will also have that help from our AIs to help us manage change.
Tell me more about that, because I never really even considered psychology and artificial intelligence in I've never correlated those things, because to me it feels like without the true, sort of emotional human experience, how can people, really counsel another person, right? So you need the education, the psychological knowledge, but great therapists, great psychologists usually have a relatability. So how in your mind would AGI, stand in the gap here for people?
Well, psychology is a science as well, or it should be a science. It shouldn't be voodoo, So, and a good psychologist doesn't get emotionally engaged. So there's a difference between being emotionally engaged yourself, feeling the emotion yourself, which a psychologist shouldn't be, versus being able to recognize different emotional states and being able to respond appropriately. Now, there was this experiment, the ELIZA experiment, which you might have heard, I forget when it was, like 50 years ago, where an extremely simple chatbot, we're talking like 50 years ago, was deployed as a psychologist, and people didn't know it was a psychologist. They thought it was a psychologist, and it would basically be like Freudian. Well, how does it make you feel? Often psychology is basically just an anchor to help you reflect yourself, your own to help you manage your own thought processes. It's not necessarily that the psychologist should share their own experience or have to have their own experience. in there. Now, a good psychologist will know what techniques are appropriate for what situation, but there's no reason why an AI wouldn't be able to do that. In fact, probably do it a lot better than most psychologists. I think there's also the old saying where, 90% of the help of a psychologist when you start using a psychologist is picking up the phone and making that appointment. It's that commitment to say, hey, I want to change something in my life.
Yeah.
So the current investment that's being placed into all technologies is dependent on the current ways in which the global economic system works. When we unleash this abundance, it changes some of the basic assumptions of how capitalism works. What's your thoughts there in terms of that disruption and who's going to pay for all of this when we have abundance? How are people going to make money? How is it going to change the fabric of our society as a result?
I'll need my AI to help me think this through. It's a nice problem to have, isn't it? So probably there will be some kind of a universal basic income, I would imagine. Because there will be abundance, and that will probably be funded by some kind of a tax on AI. But I only half jokingly said that I'll need an AI to help me think that through as well, because we will have AIs to help us. That's what I mentioned earlier, is governance itself and how to organize society. We need to throw more brain power at it. Say, what are good solutions? Let's think through this solution versus another solution, and so on. But by default, I would think probably some kind of universal basic income, would make sense. Again, the risk there is that people will just, become drug addicts or whatever, which is the downside of. We've seen a lot of that where these sort of experiments have been done. There's a risk of that. Again, we'll have the help of AI psychologists, AGI psychologists to help
getting us through. Because I was wondering, you made the lottery analogy, and a lot of what I've read about in terms of people not feeling happy is they kind of lose a sense of purpose and mission, right? Because life almost becomes too easy, and they kind of lose what am I meant to do? Are we at risk with getting to a level of AGI in every facet of our lives where people will struggle to find what's my sort of human purpose here, other than sort of depending on this technology?
Well, it'll have to be reframed. But then, if you have a job in a large company and you work in a call center or something, should that really be the purpose of your life? And to the extent that it is to people, maybe that's something that should be fixed. We do know a lot of people, their work is their identity, but kind of by default, not because they're passionate about it. I'm excluding people who are passionate about what they're doing, whether it's artists or scientists or financial managers or, CEOs. They're obviously people who are passionate about what they're doing. But I'm talking about other people that are defined by their work but don't particularly enjoy what they're doing. So I think that can be improved.
So let's turn to the question that has dogged people for a long time and is top of the agenda at the moment, was where AI starts to harm us because it wants to take control. What's your thoughts about how we prevent that existential crisis?
Yeah, I think it's completely misguided. I don't, the thought that AI will want to take over the world. I think people have seen too many movies, or are projecting, human motivations onto an AI that it simply will not have. I mean, my current company, Aigo.ai, we build systems, conversational AI, and the systems are built to serve humans, to do a particular task or to do a wide range of tasks. That's what they're designed to do, and there's really no reason to believe that they would suddenly sort of get a mind of their own. And I think it's really people projecting, human egos and our, sort of our reptile brain driving driving our behaviors, for reproduction. And how much of the behavior that humans have is driven by reproductive drives and, survival instinct, a lot. You're not going to have that in an AI. There's no reason to build that into an AI. It would get in the way of it doing a good job.
That's really interesting. So let's turn to what our audience should be doing to prepare for the AI revolution. First, as a leader, what should people be doing to upskill themselves? What is there something they should be thinking about and doing differently now?
Oh, absolutely. I think everybody should be familiar with the current tools, which is basically ChatGPT is pretty much cutting edge. There obviously a number of variations that are out there, and they quite similar. It doesn't really matter too much which ones you work with, but it's really to get to know them well, to get to know their strengths and weaknesses, to start using them, to become familiar with the technology, and then to keep up as new variations of that are developed as new technology comes about. I think that's really important for everybody, and management, of course, in particular. And it's as important to know the limitations of these tools, because you can also, from a manager's point of view, a business owner, you can waste an enormous amount of money and resource, and you can cripple your company basically if you overestimate what these systems can do. And I think Facebook is a perfect example there of what they've wasted, or the effort that they've wasted in the sort of virtual world, Web3, by overestimating what that technology is actually capable of. Or look at Amazon. They, after a good run with Alexa, they've pretty much shut down the Alexa division because the technology really wasn't good enough to live up to the promise that or the ideas that they had with it. So I think it's understanding the limitations, and the current crop of AI, as I mentioned earlier, really isn't capable of getting to AGI. We need a different approach. We need what DARPA calls a third wave of AI, and that's basically a cognitive approach where your starting point is, what does intelligence require? And you need to build a machine that can learn interactively, that can learn in real time, learn incrementally, that can reason, that has metacognition. There's a whole laundry list, and I've written quite a lot about that. It's that approach that is required. So I think it's important for people to understand the strengths of these systems and to use them, but also just as important to understand the weaknesses and not fall into the trap of some salesperson, selling you some, this can solve all your problems. You can, replace all of your employees by it, and overnight. You should ask us, well, really? And how exactly would that work, And some technology, some of these things can be done, but a lot of things can't be done.
So if you're advising a CEO about how to kind of ready their organization for the next decade, what would your checklist be, your kind of top priorities in getting them to think about things?
I'm not sure that I have much to add other than to say really become familiar with these tools. Use them yourself. Get your staff to use them. And the same, and even in education, your students need to use these tools. They're gonna, if they're not familiar with them, as they enter the workforce, they're going to have a big handicap. So it's really, use them, and the more you use them, the more you also become aware of the strengths and weaknesses. So I think that is the important message, not necessarily that you need to rush out and implement it in your company, in your workflow or customer facing. There you need to be very careful and say, is it actually going to work? What is it going to do? What is it going to cost? And what is the benefit going to be? And as new versions of the technology come about, and as cognitive architectures start becoming available, they will have better use cases.
So you said something a few moments ago that I hadn't really thought about in terms of the movie depiction of AI taking over humanity, and wouldn't have an advantage to have that instinct or any of that tech, that sort of awareness built into it. Why would it want to replicate itself? So that makes sense to me. But several episodes back we had Susie Allegre on, and she was talking about freedom to think, and she said how she doesn't let her daughter have a Alexa because it'll steal your dreams and sell them, and I kind of feel that too. I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day about Disneyland, and then I open Instagram and I'm just like getting hit with Disney ads, like my phone is listening, and that's what the primitive, in comparison, kind of technological experience. So knowing that organizations want to leverage this technology to sell their product, and AI is going to ostensibly make that easier and easier. What are the moral considerations to make sure that we can advertise to people, but not sort of kind of take over their own independent thinking in how they want to live their lives or what they want to buy?
Yes, I have some very strong views on this subject, and my own vision of AGI and of personal assistance is something we call a personal assistant. And it really should be called personal assistant, and I'll explain. There are three different meanings of personal that I think are pertinent here. The first thing is you should have a personal assistant that you own. It's yours. It serves your agenda, not some mega corporation's agenda. So that's the first personal. The second personal, it's hyper-personalized to you. You're not a demographic, you're an individual with your own history, your own dreams, your own goals and priorities. And the third personal is the issue of privacy, that you decide what you share with whom. So, your personal assistant, basically you should learn that certain things maybe you share everything with your spouse, or maybe not, and that you share certain things with Amazon and other things you don't, and so on. So, and then of course people will pay for this personal assistant. So you are no longer the product. That to me is the vision, and that's what we are trying to do. And I'm hoping that enough people will insist on that kind of personal assistant, that they will say, hey, I'm happy to pay for it, but it'll be mine. It'll be my personal assistant. It's not going to be like Alexa. That's not going to tell you what Walmart is selling, or ask Siri about the latest Samsung phone or something. It might not tell you. So absolutely, I'm exactly on that wavelength. I think we need to get away from this advertising-driven, more generally economy, but specifically as far as personal assistants are concerned.
Mm. So that's interesting, because the reason why we're lured into all of this is because it's seemingly free.
Yeah, we're selling our souls.
Yeah, so we're selling it for this extraordinary technology that can give you a weather report and tell you when your bins need to go out and so on. So how do we break that economic cycle that we get people to do it? Because this sounds like a very clear strategy?
Well, I think it's very. It obviously takes the right company to decide that they want to offer the product. Like, that's our decision. We will not sell a product that is funded by advertising. We will simply not do it. Not my company. I refuse. And so it's a combination of having companies that offer this kind of product service, and then the public responding to that and saying, yeah, this makes sense to it. And pretty much everybody I talk to about the personal assistant says, when can I have one? If you're paying $100+ for your phone right now, most people are paying extra $20 to have a personal assistant that's really useful and is yours and it's not going to share information with anyone. I think a lot of people will go for that, and I think we can turn the tide.
Well, it sounds very exciting and promising and attractive. I guess I still come back to the fears. I mean, Geoffrey Hinton obviously left Google to head off what he believes is a whole series of threats that AI poses and to campaign against it. How do we ensure that the personal assistant, which is more complex than we can possibly understand, perhaps even more complex than the people who invented it, how can we ensure that it is secure, that it won't at some point flip and reveal all our secrets to the world?
John's worried about his secrets. Just so
I've got so many.
Yeah. So, first of all, a lot of the fears and a lot of the analysis on AI are based on the current big data approaches. And as I've mentioned, I do not believe that they will get us to AGI. In fact, there's general consensus by scientists, AI, artificial intelligence researchers, that technology isn't going to get us there. So the current systems are in fact black boxes, and we don't know exactly, we can't pinpoint how they respond things. They are fed with a ton of garbage. Well, obviously, because what they were trained on is hundreds of billions of words just from the internet, from Twitter, so garbage in, garbage out. So they are opaque. You can't analyze. They don't have higher level reasoning. So they have a lot of undesirable characteristics, which kind of stokes the fears of people, saying, well, if we don't put guardrails, they're going to spew hatred and this, that, and the other. Yes, it's because of their lack of intelligence that they basically operate in that way. Now, the approach that I'm advocating of cognitive architecture, it's not feeding it, all the garbage that's out there as a training set. It's for the system to really go through a curriculum more the way a human learns, through curated information of, what information should you be getting, and to think about what you're learning, basically, to reason, does this make sense? Is it true? Where do we get this information from? So it's not an opaque system. It's a scrutable system, an auditable system. And that very, very, changes the picture significantly in terms of the risk that you have, where the system can explain itself of why it's giving you a certain answer. So I'm really not that concerned about it. And yes, there's a lot of disinformation and that, but I call those sort of mundane risks, and I call them mundane because we already have misinformation, spread by governments, by our own governments, by, partisan people on social media and whatever. I mean, there are all sorts of reasons. We need to just get better at recognizing it and need to get better defenses for that. Basically, we need people to be better at thinking.
That's super helpful, because that's not a distinction that I'd understood up to this point between what you're talking about and the hype wave that we're currently experiencing around ChatGPT. So that's incredibly helpful. Where do you see these kind of, I'm not saying them as rivals, but these different technologies, how are they playing out? How's the area that you're working on playing out compared to these kind of big model systems?
Yes. So as I mentioned, that it's a bit of an accident of history that big data approaches have been so incredibly successful. And of course, you have the big companies that have massive amounts of data, that have massive amounts of computing power. So that's a hammer they've got, so everything looks like a nail. So the people they hire, the companies they invest in, and so on, it's all about big data statistical systems. So it's been actually very difficult for us to get traction with a different approach, with, as I say, what DARPA calls the third wave, basically really a thinking machine, a cognitive engine. And so, we've been chipping away at it, commercializing this. We have some great clients. For example, 1-800-Flowers is using our system for customer support. So we are bootstrapping the company, and we are, looking to aggressively expand our development. Our company has always been doing development as well as commercialization. So the development is to continue cranking up the IQ of our system, while the commercialization is to deploy these in robust commercial applications and to generate revenue that we can do more development. But there's really a big shift now that ChatGPT has really shown the promise and whet the appetite of people, saying, wow, AI, maybe this time it's different. There are really glimmers of real intelligence there in ChatGPT. And there is. I mean, it's absolutely amazing, that you can say to the system, write me a stump speech for Trump in the style of Shakespeare, or whatever, and it'll do a good job of that. So we've seen this sort of glimmer of intelligence in ChatGPT. So I think there's a lot of excitement in people saying, okay, how can we get that? How can we get that? So people are now realizing, that OpenAI, the CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman, said, we've really hit a wall. We can't build bigger systems, we can't go much further in building bigger systems because we've used up all the data that there is just about. And secondly, it's not getting us a lot of additional benefit. So there are diminishing returns. So they are starting to realize those inherent limitations in this approach. But very few people actually have the background, the understanding of what is required to build intelligence, because their starting point is that is mathematical, statistical. That's their background. And what you really need is you need a starting point of intelligence. What does intelligence require? And not, we have all of this data. What can we do with it? We have all this computing power. What can we do with it? What problems can we solve? Again, going back to this narrow AI of where the engineers say, what clever things can we do? What can we come up with? You have to turn that around and say, what does intelligence require? And how do we build a system that inherently has intelligence? That's basically a cognitive architecture. So, we obviously hoping that we will get increasing support for what we're doing, and that more people will start working on real intelligence.
Hi, this is Emma Sinclair, business psychologist, occasional co-host, and fan of the Evolving Leader podcast. There are now over 100 episodes with an incredible list of guests encompassing a broad range of disciplines, all handpicked by us to help you, our audience, understand and overcome your greatest leadership challenges. We have so much more to come, so wherever you get your podcasts, please subscribe, share, rate, and review. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Can you set some kind of a time frame for us in terms of, because we seem to be going through some sort of very rapid evolution around this, but that might be a bit illusory given what you're saying. What do you think the next 5-10 years holds for how what you're doing will play out? When will it start to really change our lives?
Yeah. I always have to answer that question in terms of, when will we get AGI? And I don't measure it so much in years as in dollars.
Okay.
From our perspective, that's kind of where we are, because we would be a lot further if we'd had more dollars to, if we had a bigger team. We are currently 30 people in the company. We're not going to crack AGI with 30 people. We don't need 30,000 for it, but not a bit more than 30. So that's talking from our own perspective. It's hard for me to see that it's going to be more than 10 years. There are so many people working on it. There's so much money thrown at it. Even if they're, bumbling along and looking at the wrong solutions, which a lot of companies are, there are such a lot of smart people working on it that, the right people will get the right funding at some point. And then I think they can make quite rapid progress. I don't believe there's a fundamental hardware limitation. We may need some specialized hardware, but we don't need quantum computing to crack AGI. So there's not a serious hardware limitation as far as I can see. It's a software problem. And let's say I would be surprised unless, of course, AGI or AI development is shut down seriously, which, of course, some people are asking for. Then, of course, we could go back to the Dark Ages as well. Civilization certainly can shoot itself in the foot.
What else should we be asking you in the time we have left, Peter? What haven't we covered?
Well, obviously, my day job is, commercially utilizing this conversational AI technology, and I think there are such huge opportunities there. We all hate customer service when we call in to a computer, and whenever I tell people that's what we're doing, and they say, "Oh yeah, I hate these things. I just always press 0 to get to an operator." It doesn't have to be that way. There is better technology available. In fact, talking to a human isn't fun either in most cases. It's not that we love that. You wait for 20 minutes or half an hour to talk to somebody. You explain your story to them, and they say, "Oh, I have to transfer you." And then you wait another 10 minutes, tell your story again from the beginning if you don't get cut off in the meantime, et cetera, et cetera. We can fix that right now with, there is better technology. It's really very sad on how unambitious or how blind a lot of companies are. We talk to a lot of large companies. You can take any large institution, any government, any big company for that matter. And, when you talk to them, you say, "Oh, we pride ourselves in customer service, and that's the most important thing, and that's why we have humans," and so on. And then they do really, really stupid things. They don't, walk the talk. For example, you get into an automated system, and the first thing they tell you, "Your business is really important to us. Please carefully listen to, and that might be recorded." So before you even start, you have to spend like a minute or so listening to garbage, and the fact when you get transfer from an automated system or from one person to another, that they can't transfer the information from one person to another. That technology has existed for 40 years, that CEO. So I get really riled up when a CEO or customer experience, VP of customer experience tells me how important customer service is to them, and they don't take care of these really fundamental things, So there are really much better solutions available, and well, obviously we believe ours is the best, but that's for another day.
So what is standing in your way right now, apart from just money, to accelerate this? What else are you
just money
needing to do? It's just money.
Yeah, we I spent 25 years ago, I spent 5 years just studying intelligence, all different aspects of intelligence. I spent the last 20 years leading R&D teams to, build various prototypes, to build our commercial. It's not really that we need to do R&D to solve the problem. It's really more development. Now, I'm not saying there aren't still technical problems to be overcome, that will take some really smart people to solve. But I don't see any fundamental roadblocks for us getting to human level intelligence. It's just we need, instead of 30 people, we need a few hundred people working on this.
Mm-hmm. So how can people get in touch with you, Peter?
Aigo.ai, Aigo.ai. If you go to the website, we have links to quite a number of articles that I've written. You can also find my articles on medium.com, just Peter Voss, medium.com. And I've written, about AI risk, about free will, rationality, and of course quite a lot about the third wave of AI, cognitive architectures, and the shortcomings of statistical systems.
Great. Well, we'll make sure to put all that in the show notes. And this has been really educational for us. So thank you for your time and for sharing all that you've learned and all that you're doing.
Yeah, I think for me it's been a kind of counter note to some of the things I've been reading in the mainstream media about AI, which has been really interesting and, sort of creates a bit of a disruption in my own head about this topic and making me want to look at it from a different perspective. So I'm really looking forward to reading some of your Medium articles to try and get that kind of alternative perspective on things. So I really appreciate that, Peter. Thank you so much for sharing your
feel free
thoughts.
to reach out. Anybody wants to reach out on, Twitter or email peter@aigo.ai, very simple. And yes, thank you for excellent questions. This was fun.
All right, folks, thanks for listening. And until next time, remember, the world is evolving. Are you?